Alrighty, I guess let's talk about this game. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and I don't know really where to begin with this game. Talking about this game, going over the game, and what we saw. Started off the game with the same game plan that I always had. I was going to take notes, about the game and as it went on, and then kind of gather my thoughts and try to give you an honest breakdown of what we saw from this team, and what to expect from this team. And it was just, in the end, it just wasn't what I wanted it to be. It wasn't what I hoped it would be. It wasn't. I'm just disappointed is the best way to say it. That's the best way. That's the only thing that I can say, is that I'm disappointed in this team. Let's start, I guess, with some of the positives, and then we can start talking about all of the bad things that we saw from this game. The first positive, and I think that we have to talk about it, is Michael Carter. Michael Carter looked incredibly good against the Baltimore Ravens defense. He looked, he just looked really, really good. A lot of rushing. I'm trying to pull up the stats right now. Michael Carter with 10 carries for 60 yards. He's 6 yards a carry average. Really, really good there. And his longest run for 22 yards. The other thing that I think we got to talk about, that I think I was really impressed about from this team, was Garrett Wilson. I think we waited way too long to get him involved, because when he was involved, he was dynamic. 4 receptions, 52 yards, 13 yards in average. His longest was a 19-yard catch. But ultimately, really good stuff we saw from the offensive side of the ball from those guys. Elijah Moore with a couple of good catches and a couple of good runs there. Corey Davis with a couple of big catches, but we'll talk about him a little bit later. And then let's talk about this defense and what we saw out of this defense. Some of the positives for the defense, I think, was the whole defense. Honestly, I think the whole defense deserves credit for what they were able to do. This does not look like the defense from last year. It doesn't look like the same defensive play calling from last year at all. We used our entire defensive line rotation in the first quarter. Every single player got a rep. They were all dynamic and making and creating space and doing things and getting into the backfield and just really, really being disruptive, which is one of the things I liked to see from our defensive line. Man, we talked about it, and we talked about it beforehand, but Quinnen Williams is different, man. He is going to explode onto the scene this year and really, really mess some quarterbacks up and just ruin people's days. Jermaine Johnson showed up and showed out, showing that he was why he was taken that high, with half a sack credited to him, which was pretty good. It was good to see that from him. Michael Clemens, too, he was real dynamic. There was one really good play, just stopping the run, getting all up into space and doing everything there. Quincy with the sack, Jacob Martin and Jermaine Johnson splitting a sack. So you really, really like to see that. Now, if we talk about our secondary and we talk about our team in coverage, I really liked what I saw from Sauce today. Really sticky in coverage, really good. Even coaching the safeties at some points, like, hey, I got this zone, you got to get this zone, what are you doing, kind of a thing. And you love to see what we saw from from Sauce. Really, really impressive. DJ Reed with an interception as well. You love to see that. And again, also really sticky in coverage. This is not the same defense that we had last year. Really good really good play out of our cornerbacks, in my opinion. Jordan Whitehead, moving on to the safeties, played really, really well. I really liked what we saw from him. He was really, really involved. 5 tackles, 4 of them being solo tackles. So really involved in just the run game and the tackling and the, making sure to not give up explosive plays. But we're staying in the positive, so I'm not going to talk about LaMarcus Joyner. And then I think the all-star of this defense was this linebacker room. Quan Alexander, C.J. Mosley, and Quincy Williams were all out there, and they were flying up and down the field. They were everywhere, in people's faces. I felt so confident in this linebacker room for the first time in a long time for this Jets team. C.J. Mosley led the team with total tackles, with 11 total tackles. He also led the team in solo tackles with 7. Quincy being a part of a lot of tackles as well. All of his tackles were solo tackles with 6. And then Quan Alexander with 3 total tackles, and all 3 of them being solo tackles as well. I really liked what I saw from this linebacker room, extending on to like Michael Carter II, starting off hot, all of these guys, and coming in and playing really, 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 really well. And I just wanted to say one thing is I'm not the person who doesn't admit when he was wrong about a player or about anything like that. Boy, was I wrong about Quan Alexander. Quan Alexander has come into this team, and he's really I don't know. There's something about what he's doing in that linebacker room that's really making him dynamic and interesting, and I really, really liked what I saw from him. Really, really disruptive. Let me see if there's anything else. Just to talk about specific things. Right here in my notes on the top of the second page, Quinnen Williams is the best player on the Jets. I stand by that. I think he was so dynamic. Jermaine Johnson with the sack, very, very good. Sauce when he was covering Andrews was super sticky, man. I liked that they were playing more matchup games, more like, hey, we're going to move Sauce around to wherever Andrews is. We're going to move these guys around to really kind of play these matchups and to try to force these things. Linebackers were flying. I talked about that. We stopped the run really effectively. We told Lamar Jackson to beat us with his arms. We really dared him to come out here and beat us with his arms. And unfortunately, because of 3 explosive plays, it wasn't like he came out there and he really beat us with his arm. It was because of 3 explosive plays, 3 big plays that if we were looking at it and if we stop those explosive plays, Lamar Jackson doesn't have as nearly as, I don't want to say impressive because he doesn't really have an impressive stat line. He went, 17 for 30 for 213 yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. If we can limit these explosive plays, and these explosive plays come down to 2 players that I didn't want on the New York Jets team at all. And we'll talk about that when we start going into the negatives. I put it in here, never take Garrett Wilson off the field. Garrett Wilson looked so good in his route running and his catching and his ability after the ball. I wrote that down after he caught the ball on the sideline and made 3 Ravens miss, and then turned a play that should have ended with a 1-yard gain into a 9-yard gain. Really impressive out of him. Elijah Moore as well with some impressive catches. And that's all of the good things that I really have to say about this defense and this offense. Now it's time for us to talk about the bad. And I guess we're going to be here for a while, so strap in. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball, because I don't feel like there's as many bad things on the defensive side of the ball as there are on the offensive side of the ball. So let's start with the bad on the defensive side of the ball. One of the things that I think I fear about this team, and I also think as a positive, is this defensive line rotation. I feel I'm worried that we're going to get into a situation with this defensive line rotation that we're gonna just have a mismatch of defensive line players or important defensive line players in big moments, I guess is the best way to say it. What's gonna happen on that third down when, it's not Carl Lawson out there for whatever reason on a third down, or Jermaine's not out there for a third down because they're deciding to play, Jacob Martin, or I don't know. Like, I know that we've got a lot of really good players, and I like Jacob Martin, and I know Bryce Huff didn't suit up, but you'd expect that he'll get his nod eventually. Your Bryce Huffs and your different guys like that. But like I'm worried that we're trying to be a little bit too big-brained with the defensive line rotation. But then the other thing goes, like, it very clearly worked. We had a lot of fresh legs on the defensive line throughout the entire game. But there's that. Junio Rudy, thank you for stopping by. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Stops with and says, it's not the fact that we got blown out, but seeing other teams like the Lions, Texans, and Falcons, etc., being competitive when they were as bad as us last year, just awful. I agree. It's disappointing. Like, the one that disappointed me the most was Chicago winning, obviously. But the one thing that I will say about all of those teams is that, like, I don't want to come up with an excuse or anything like that, and I don't want to be the guy who always has the excuse for the team. We lost this game. That loss is on us. The Ravens didn't beat us. The Jets lost. There's a difference there, right? I said before the game, and I mentioned it before the game, I said, if we can hold Baltimore to 24 points, this offense should be good for 27. But when you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're not scoring at the end of these plays and you're making stupid mistakes and you're doing these things, it's really frustrating because that game should not have been that big of a defeat. It should not have been 24-9 at all. At the minimum, we're looking at a game that it should have been like, 24-13 with a missed field goal and a missed extra point. It's disappointing because this offense was touted to supposed to be a much, much improved unit, and it looked much, much improved except for two positions. And unfortunately, those two positions are the most important positions on the field at offensive tackle, specifically one offensive tackle, because I liked the other one. He actually did pretty well. And then quarterback and Joe Flacco. It was just abysmal play from that situation. And another thing, Mike LaFleur is not free of the blame of the loss in this game. The run game was dynamic and moving the ball and moving the chains, and you just abandon the run game almost entirely. Someone explain to me how Michael Carter only has 10 carries in this game, but Joe Flacco was allowed to throw the ball almost 60 times. Michael Carter ran for 60 yards on 10 carries. That's 6 yards a carry. He had a 22-yard run. It just doesn't make sense why you gave up on the run game so quickly, especially because we gave up on it early and we weren't behind. We weren't in the point like in the third quarter where we let them score 2 touchdowns and now we're behind by a lot. And you got to be like, it's just crazy, man. How are we not? I said it in my thing. The thing that we needed to control in this game was time of possession. And you're exactly right. You're exactly right, Junio. If we would have ran the ball more and controlled the time of possession the way that we were supposed to, the way that everybody knows is the way that you beat Lamar Jackson, we would have kept Lamar off the field. Man, I was talking about it. Lamar did not look good today. He had 4, maybe 5 passes where you were like, all right, cool. And the rest of the evening or the rest of the afternoon, he looked kind of bad. We didn't let him run the ball. We didn't let him really. He ran 6 times for 17 yards. it's disappointing. It's just what it is. It's disappointing. Mike LaFleur deserves a lot of blame for the uncreative play calling. And the one thing that I will say about Mike LaFleur specifically is, why in the hell is Lawrence Cager on the field at all? It made no sense to put Lawrence Cager out on the field. It makes no sense that Lawrence Cager is on this 53-man roster. Yet you're putting him on the field over guys like Tyler Conklin and CJ Uzomah, who, by the way, didn't get a sniff at the ball almost all game. CJ Uzomah didn't get a single target. Tyler Conklin got the ball thrown at him 7 times, but that was all in garbage time, really, where he was able to go 4 for 14 with 1 touchdown there at the end. It does not make sense to me. You go out and you spend money at the tight end position. You spend money to bring in these guys. You spend the draft capital to draft Jeremy Rucker. And I know that he's injured and he couldn't play, so I'm not blaming him for that. And then you don't use CJ Uzomah at all. And Tyler Conklin gets 7 targets, which is a lot of targets, by the way, like when you look in the grand scheme of things. But you're putting Lawrence Cager out at all? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. And then he goes out there and he proves me right. And the first thing he does is he slips and causes an interception. The first thing Lawrence Cager does. It just blew my mind with that. Absolutely abysmal from that. And then the other people you got to blame here, you got to talk about the fumbles, right? Because the New York Jets had 2 fumbles. And you look at it and you go, Breece Hall with the fumble, that's his welcome to the NFL moment. You know, you got to protect the ball at the next level. Running with the ball one-handed on the outside arm, just not good from the rookie there. You got to get better there. Tyler Conklin with a very uncharacteristic fumble, and again, just a sad sight to see it. And you hate to see it, and you just don't. I don't know. It's just disappointing there. And then we got to talk about this offensive line, and this is where I'm going to get really, really upset. This is where I'm going to go a little bit off my rocker, and we're going to talk about this offensive line. I'm going to leave my pounding and screaming and yelling and all of that until after, because I'll wait till after. But we've got to talk about this offensive line. Unable to protect or cover or anything, to do anything against the Ravens. Unable to stop them on the left side. Like, let's talk about some of the positives. Elijah Vera Tucker looked okay. Laken Tomlinson looked barely okay. Connor McGovern looked solid. And I was really impressed by what I saw from Max Mitchell. Not a lot coming from his side of the field. If we're talking about like mistakes or pressures or sacks or anything like that, there wasn't so much there where I was like, you know what? This was that he played this bad or that bad or anything like that. Like I said, I liked what I saw from him. I liked what I saw from a lot of the guys on the offensive line. But let's talk about the bad, and the bad is George Fant. George Fant looked absolutely atrocious in this game. Almost all of the pressure came from the left side between him and Laken Tomlinson, and they're both supposed to be the veterans of this offensive line. I think the sacks, I think like 2 or 3 of those sacks came from that side of the field, which is out of this world. It just, Robert S., thank you, and Thompson was pushed around too. Yeah, no, Laken Tomlinson was pushed around too. Like, I'm not removing the blame from him at all. This whole left side of our offensive line just looked abysmal. Like, we really need to fix the offensive line, because while a lot of people are going to try and blame Joe Flacco for this game, and Joe Flacco's not without fault here. So let me start by saying that part of the reason we lose this game is because of Joe Flacco. But I think more importantly, the reason we lose this game is because of this offensive line. So how many times was immobile, 37-year-old Joe Flacco running for his life? Joe Flacco is not Zach Wilson. He's not. He should not have to scramble. He should get 2.5, 3 seconds in the pocket to be able to move the ball around. Because we saw once the ball got into our playmakers' hands, they were dynamic with it. Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, dynamic. Breece Hall, Michael Carter, dynamic. Braxton Berrios, dynamic. Once they had the ball, like, it's insane that this offensive line couldn't protect him at all. And Junior, I talked about that too. LaFleur is a big reason for some of this stuff. Why did he give up on the run game so early? This offensive line was finally creating push, and they weren't good in pass protection. So who in their right mind throws the ball 60 times? Joe Flacco went 37 of 59. Why are you having him drop back 59 times? We ran the ball 16 times when our running back room is one of the key pieces of this offense. We traded up to go get Elijah Vera Tucker. We traded up to go get Breece Hall. We drafted Michael Carter to fill in this goal. We went and signed Laken Tomlinson to help in this zone run scheme. And in the run game, everybody looked solid. Max was getting to the second level. George Fant and Laken Tomlinson were a wall of meat that couldn't be moved. The tight ends were involved. The wide receivers were involved. Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios, the two shortest wide receivers, were taking on safeties and linebackers in blocks, trying to keep them in line. And we ran the ball 16 times. 17 if you count one of Joe Flacco's scrambles where he barely made it to the line of scrimmage, so I don't count it. We ran the ball 16 times. Unacceptable. You can't do that if you're Mike LaFleur. We are a game, and the game plan should be we run the ball to set up the pass, and all we did was pass the ball with Joe Flacco behind that offensive line. It's just sad. Robert S. Tom Brady would have lost his mind if his O-line was blocking like that. Absolutely. Absolutely, Robert S. You're absolutely correct. It's just not good enough from our offensive line. It's not good enough. That's just period. I think truthfully and honestly, and I'll repeat this because I said it earlier. I said that if we wanted to beat the Baltimore Ravens, we needed to do one thing. And that's hold the Baltimore Ravens to 24 points. If we can hold the Baltimore Ravens to 24 points, and you can look this up. I think I mentioned this on Jeremy's live stream on Wacky Wednesday. You can go look it up there. I'm pretty sure I said it there. I said if we can hold them to 24 points, I think that this offense should be good for at least 27 points, especially against the Baltimore Ravens defense, which wasn't that scary at all. Let's say this. First of all, I hope that it's not a serious injury for the Baltimore Ravens' Marlon Humphrey. I hope that it just looked worse than it actually is. I hope that he's back in pads and out in the field, but that did not look good. And I really hope that he's okay. You never want to see that from any player. Same thing goes for Juwan James. It is unfortunate to see that. Oh, it was Kyler Fuller. Thank you. It was Kyle Fuller. You're absolutely right. Thank you for correcting me there. It wasn't Humphrey. It was Fuller. You hate to see Fuller go down, but you also hate to see their left tackle, Juwan James, go down. He has a ruptured Achilles. That news came out before I went live, and man, you just hate to see that from him. It's just an injury Just injuries and injuries and injuries. It's unfortunate. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to get a bottle of water right there. All right, thanks for holding on with me. It's just disappointing to see that from there. But let's talk about some of the things that I wanted to say that were on my notes here. First of all, I loved the people that were on the Kyle Hamilton hype train. We made him look foolish today, in my opinion. I was never a fan of Kyle Hamilton coming out of the draft. I never wanted Kyle Hamilton coming out of the draft. I was not a fan of Kyle Hamilton coming out of the draft, and I think with good reason. And so I'm really happy and really liked what we were able to do with him, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, making a miss and just kind of looking foolish there. The one thing that I will say about this is that hopefully George Fant can fix whatever's wrong with George Fant and he can prove me wrong and he can get back to average, because after this game, if you don't believe me, I wrote it here. Oh yeah, it's right there. Oh yeah, let's extend Fant. Great idea. All these people that want George Fant to be our left tackle for the future, it's games like this where make me go, absolutely not. He had one good year, and he's got to prove it that he can do it. And honestly, I don't care that you're moving from left tackle to right tackle, from left tackle to right tackle. You've been in the league for 6 years, and you've played at both sides of the football multiple times each of those years. It's not like we were asking you to go from tackle to center or center to tackle or anything crazy like that. We were asking you to flip sides, something that you've been doing your entire career, and he just looked bad. And if he doesn't recover and he doesn't bounce back and he doesn't do any of those things, if Dwayne Brown comes back, which after the press conference that Robert Saleh had doesn't sound like that's going to happen, but if Dwayne Brown comes back, I am on, and Max Mitchell keeps doing what he was doing, because I was actually really impressed with Max Mitchell today. I'm on board with saying, you know what, we're going to bench Fant. Play Dwayne Brown if he looks better than George Fant, and play Max Mitchell, because I think Max actually looks pretty good today. Jets mess. What's going on? Thanks for stopping by. You know, I was actually quite impressed with what I saw from Max. There was definitely things that he needed to fix, things that he needed to work on, things that he needed to make better, to look better. I'm sorry, but that being said, it's going to be an interesting month of September. And Junio beat me there. It looks like an 0-4 start. Jacoby looked good for Cleveland, and Pittsburgh looks like a feisty team. I will put some caveats on that, right? Because I was watching those other games as well. I will put some caveats on all of that. One, Carolina. Carolina's defense is not our defense, right? That being said, we're probably going to lose to Cleveland just because of the fact, not because of Jacoby or anything like that. I think we're actually going to be able to hold down Jacoby Brissett in the Cleveland offense. If I'm being honest, I think our defense is that good. Defense really showed up and showed out today. Really, really did against a good team. The way the defense was playing early on, I thought we were going to win this game. In that first and second quarter, I thought this was ours. But I think we lose that game unless this offensive line, if the offensive line gets better and fixes themselves and looks to be more improved and more cohesive on that left side, and we stick to the run game and we do the things that were working well with us this game, which I think are going to be very similar things that'll work well against Cleveland. If we stick to the game plan, run the ball more, and actually give Joe Flacco time in the pocket, we can beat Cleveland. It's unlikely, but we can beat Cleveland. Let's talk about Cincinnati. Cincinnati lost to, in my opinion, a weak Pittsburgh Steelers team. They the Pittsburgh Steelers defense as a whole, if you remove TJ Watt and Minka, because I think those, like, I think we're better. I think we're better than the Pittsburgh Steelers defense all up and down the roster except for 3 spots. That's Cam Hayward. Yeah, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, and Minka Fitzpatrick. And I don't think the gap between Minka and Jordan Whitehead is as big as the gaps between Cam Hayward and TJ Watt. Let's just say it like that. Well, I think Minka's a solid safety, and TJ Watt's a superstar, and Cam Hayward's a superstar. I think that overall we have a better defense, like personnel-wise, than what Pittsburgh has. And this is going to be a real test because that'll be the first time where we're facing legit number 1 wide receivers in our schedule is going to be against Cleveland. And it's going to be the same kind of thing. If we can limit Cincinnati's offense, if we can limit Cincinnati's offensive production, which is super hard. It's way harder said than done. Right? It's way easier said than done, is what I mean to say, because they're insane up and down the roster. But if our defensive line can keep playing the way that they were playing today and be disruptive and get in that backfield and be all up in Joe Burrow's face and do the same things that we were able to do this game, and we're able to limit the explosives that we saw from this team today, there's a chance against Cleveland. And then I think we should be able to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. This offense from the Pittsburgh Steelers looked atrocious. And unfortunately, it looks like TJ Watt might have torn something in his arm. If you're telling me that we have to face a Pittsburgh Steelers without TJ Watt, I'm super confident. You double team Cam Hayward every single time. No one else on the defensive line of Pittsburgh is scary outside of TJ and Cam Hayward. You should be able to protect them there. And then you really attack the corners and you never throw the ball. Wherever Minka Fitzpatrick is, you don't throw the ball there. You really try to target these corners that they have in Pittsburgh, and you can win that game. So I think our first win is against Pittsburgh. I was hoping that our first win was going to be today so that we could end the September losing streak, which Junio just brings up right here. But we don't. I think we got to wait until Pittsburgh. That's when I think we can get our first win, because I think that I think this defense is dynamic, and that offense just isn't looking that great. The offensive line isn't looking that great in Pittsburgh. But let's talk about some players on this team that should not be on this team by week 2. I already mentioned one guy. I'm going to mention him again. Lawrence Cager should not be on this team. If Jeremy Ruckert gets healthy, if Jeremy Ruckert makes it back and he can play in week 2, you cut Lawrence Cager immediately, and you fill that roster spot with somebody else, with something else. Whether that gives you the opportunity to bring Mims onto the field, whether that gives you the opportunity to suit up Bryce Huff. Those guys are more deserving of a spot on this roster than Lawrence Cager, in my opinion. The moment Jeremy Ruckert comes back and he's healthy, you should not and you will not play Lawrence Cager ever. That's number 1. Should not be on this team week 2. Make the moves that you need to make, Joe Douglas. Make it happen. Number 2, the fact that LaMarcus Joyner is our starting safety absolutely blows my mind. The fact that we kept LaMarcus Joyner over guys like Will Parks and Jason Pinnock absolutely blows my mind. LaMarcus Joyner was directly responsible for 2 of the explosive plays that we saw from the Baltimore Ravens. 2 of the explosive plays. He was getting coached and told where to go by rookie Sauce Gardner. Like, absolutely atrocious from LaMarcus Joyner. I do not want to see him practicing with the 1s almost at all. I want to see him with the 2s, honestly, with the 3s, cut him, promote Will Parks, and we'll see what we have with Will Parks and Tony Adams, because I am done with LaMarcus Joyner. I did not want him to make this team. I wanted him to get cut, and the fact that we lost Jason Pinnock because of LaMarcus Joyner absolutely blows my mind. And last but not least, player that should not have been on the field. This player is probably going to stay, and what I'm about to say is going to be a little bit blasphemous, and I get that, but I'm going to say it anyway. Why was Bryce Hall on the field at all, man? Like, why? I understand that, like, why is Bryce Hall on the field at all? I'm just going to say it like that. Why is not, why, I'm at a loss for words. I understand the play call there. You bring out your dime package so that you have another big-bodied corner so that you could line up your corners with their tight ends. And I understand that the play call that the Ravens did, was really smart and put a wide receiver on Bryce Hall. And I understand that Bryce played that coverage pretty well, and that surprisingly to everybody, Lamar Jackson threw the ball very, very well on that pass. He put it literally in the only place where his wide receiver could go get it. I get all of those things. I understand all of that. But let me ask you this question. If that was Sauce Gardner on Duvernay, if that was DJ Reed on Duvernay, hell, if that was Brandon Eccles on Duvernay, Michael Carter II on Duvernay, is that a touchdown? I don't think so. I'll give you Brandon Eccles. I'm really high on Brandon Eccles, and I know that I'm in the minority there. But if it was any of those guys, you think that that's a touchdown? Because I don't. If that was Sauce in that situation, I don't think that's a touchdown. If that was DJ Reed in that situation, I don't think it's a touchdown. Hell, I'll even say it. We should have kept Quan on. I think Quan would have stuck with Duvernay. Quan was looking insane. Insane. I was never a fan of keeping Bryce Hall on this roster. I thought we should have traded him and taken the 4th or the 5th round pick that we would have gotten for him. Because we had guys like Brandon Eccles. And it would have given us the ability to keep a guy like Javelin Guidry, who has Olympic speed. But no, we kept Bryce Hall on this roster so that he could play in dime packages, so that he can cover tight ends. Just for the first time he's on the field, he gets, the coverage dictates it, puts him out there with the wide receiver, and he gets burned. Just sad, man. It's just disappointing because it was funny. If my wife wasn't handling the baby and putting him to sleep, I would pull her in here to tell her so that you guys could hear this from her as well. Because she saw Brees after he did that first run where it was like, Brees. And I was like, man, I love this kid. And she was like, is this the kid that the Brees and the Bryce Hall? Because she follows Jets very passively. And I was like, yes. But I never want Brees to be off of the field. I would love to have him and Michael Carter on the field at all times. And I really never want to see Bryce on the field. And then a few minutes later, obviously, later on in the game, boom, Bryce Hall is on the field. He gets targeted, touchdown. Like, Junio, Bam Knight would have been a better weapon than Cager. I don't necessarily agree. I don't think Bam Knight would have accomplished anything. I'm not the biggest Bam Knight fan. I think he's 1 year away from being an NFL running back. I was on board and in favor of keeping Ty Johnson over Bam Knight. But I see what you're saying. Absolutely. Like, I would have rather have Bam than Cager. At least Bam knows how to play the position that he's slotted at. To be fair, that touchdown was a great throw. Absolutely. And I said that. That was one of the very first things I saw. I saw a stat about that touchdown. Duvernay had 0.1 yards of separation from Bryce Hall. The smallest separation on a touchdown pass over the last 4 seasons. Exactly. That means he wasn't separated. That means that he was covered. Bryce Hall should have stopped the ball. That's what that's telling me. What that tells me that was a very, very risky throw and that the wide receiver caught the ball. And it wasn't like he went up and snatched it. No, the ball fell into his arms. It was right here. Boom, and he got it. And Bryce Hall was right on top of him. And he couldn't stop that. Literally like 5 or 10 plays before, Sauce gets targeted by Mark Andrews, a much better receiver than Duvernay is, a much bigger target, a much stronger target, and he gets a hand in there and stops that ball. Like, it's just, like, I understand that I'm comparing cornerback 4 to cornerback 1 on this team, right? But still, if you're going to play him, you got to have confidence that he's going to be able to stop a guy who is 0.1 yards of separation. That means he's right here. He's in your arm. Like, that's 0.1 yards. Like, he's right there. You were all over him. And to let that go in, that just upsets me even more. Another 2 players that should not be on this roster, week 2. I was wrong, guys. I was wrong. Greg the Leg is not the answer. I didn't think Eddie was the answer either, and I still stand by that. I don't think Eddie was the answer. I wish we would have had a better kicking competition and we would have gone somewhere else to find a kicker. But unfortunately, Greg is here. 4 points left on the board because of Greg. 4 points. And you can't tell me that we didn't leave another extra 3 points going for it on 4th downs in certain situations where we had turnover on downs because we didn't trust Greg and his leg. Lots. It's just disappointing to see it there. Very, very interesting on that one. And then Braden Mann just looked horrible today. Braden Mann should be cut, and we should go find another punter. There are punters available. You go find somebody. Braden Mann looked atrocious today. Absolutely abysmal. Absolutely abysmal today. Was not good at all. Man has got to go to you can't be pumped in the bowl 20 yards. Exactly. Not sure what those words mean together, but what I'm assuming they say is Braden Mann has to go because you can't punt in your own stadium only 20 yards when it's not even that windy. Because it wasn't that windy at all. Like, unacceptable out of Braden Mann. He's got to go. So, yeah. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. What did the Baltimore Ravens do well in this game? I think the one real thing about the Baltimore Ravens is that they won the time of possession battle. They held on to the ball a lot more than the New York Jets did. They had over 20 runs, running plays in this game, which is where you want to be. You know, they kept it on schedule. They didn't leave any points on the board at all. And you got to give their coaching staff, Baltimore's coaching staff, credit where credit is due in Baltimore. They knew the weak links for the New York Jets defense, and they targeted those weak links. They looked at us last year, and they tried to say that the running game was a weak spot. They tried to do that. We shut the run game down. We kept almost all of their rushers under 3 yards a carry, which is exactly what you want to be. If they're under 3 yards a carry, that means that they're not getting first downs with the run game. They're not moving the chains with the run game. You love to see that. And then the other thing that they really knew is they knew who the weak spots were on our defense, player personnel-wise. They knew that LaMarcus Joyner was a liability. They knew that Bryce Hall was a liability. And if you look at it, the 3 touchdowns that they got in the air all came against what players? LaMarcus Joyner, Bryce Hall. They knew to avoid players like Sauce Gardner. They knew to avoid or tried to avoid players like DJ Reed. They tried to get the ball in the middle of the field, and they were successful getting the ball in the middle of the field. Our linebackers, I felt like, played a little bit high in their zone, so it gave the middle of the field underneath quite a bit of space for Lamar Jackson to throw to his his wide receivers and things like that. But it's disappointing because all of the keys to victory that I said there were 5 keys to victory. Let me pull up those notes. I said that there were 5 keys to victory. We did almost all of those things, right? My first key to victory was abuse this bad offensive line. That's exactly what we did. We were in the backfield. We didn't give Lamar Jackson any space to run. We didn't do any of that. Key to victory number 2, force Lamar Jackson to beat you with his arms, and that's exactly what we did. We dared Lamar Jackson and this offensive coordinator and this offensive staff to beat us in the air, and we were able to manage it, and we were able to hold them down. And then my last offensive one was manage Mark Andrews. Keep Mark Andrews under 90 yards. That was the key number. And we did that. Mark Andrews, 5 receptions for 52 yards on 7 targets. We did all of the things right on the defensive side of the ball. We played this defensive game really, really well. We did all of the things that we needed to do on the defensive side of the ball. We dared him to throw. We dared him to tackle, to try and challenge our secondary. And kudos to the Baltimore coaching staff. They knew the weak spot, targeted LaMarcus Joyner twice, 2 explosive plays. Bryce Hall comes out in the field. Boom, you throw the ball at him, because what is Bryce Hall going to do? Next, let's talk about the keys to victory on the offensive side of the ball. Both things that we were unable to take advantage of. The first one was wide receivers need to earn their paychecks. I specifically singled out Elijah Moore. I said guys like Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, and Corey Davis need to go out and earn their paychecks. And while they were out there and they did have relatively successful games, I'll read the box scores for our wide receivers, because it's not like they're bad stats. Corey Davis with 6 receptions for 77 yards. Garrett Wilson with 4 receptions for 52 yards. Elijah Moore, 5 receptions for 49 yards. Michael Carter and Breece Hall combined. Michael Carter went 7 for 40 and Breece Hall 6 for 38. Braxton Berrios 5 for 37 and Tyler Conklin 4 for 14. It just wasn't enough, is what it was. That's just the reality of it. And here's the one that hurts the most, is control the time of possession. It's right there. Boom. Control the time of possession. Something that we could have done. Our running game was looking efficient. Both of our running backs were averaging almost more than 4+ yards per carry. That means that you're moving the chains. That means that your runs are being effective. Michael Carter, 10 for 66 yards. 6-yard average per run. Breece Hall, 6 for 23, 3.8 yards average per run. This game was lost by the New York Jets, not won by the Baltimore Ravens. We played and we shot ourselves in the foot. Joe Flacco throwing the ball behind Corey Davis. Corey Davis not catching that ball, leading to a drop pass on a key 3rd down. Tyler Conklin catching the ball and in the process of going down, doesn't protect the ball, fumbles it, gives the ball away. Breece Hall one-handing the ball in the middle of the field, leading to a fumble. Lawrence Cager slipping and falling in the middle of his route, leading to the interception. Braden Mann with a 20-yard punt, putting the Baltimore Ravens on our side of the football field, where they march down and get the touchdown. This game was lost because the New York Jets lost it, not because the Baltimore Ravens won it. We've been able to move the ball. They wouldn't have even been able to score those 24 points. Yeah. If we would have kept the time of possession, if we would have ran the ball more effectively, we would have been in a much better situation. But again, I think we lost this game, not the other way around. The offense lost this game, not the other way around. The defense did exactly what we needed them to do. The defense, I just don't know what else to say at this point. It's disappointing is the best way to say it. It's unfortunate that this happened. But we move on. We start working. Week 2, we've got a new matchup. Week 2, we're going to Cleveland. And we got to see how we can take advantage of Cleveland. We got to look at what we could do to try to beat Cleveland. Because, you know, if Carolina was able to really, really stick it to Cleveland, and Carolina was able to keep it and keep the game close and all the way into the end and all of that stuff, we should be able to do the same thing. Guys, we got 10 minutes left in the stream. 10 minutes. If you've got any questions, comments, anything that you want to have answered or know my opinion on or anything like that, leave it in the chat. If you haven't already, guys, hit the like button. I really, really would appreciate it. It helps the video, helps it get out there. But yeah, this is just sad scenes. It's difficult to win games when you can't move the ball effectively. It's difficult to win games when you can't. That's it. It's difficult to win games when you can't move the ball effectively. When your offense is going out there, moving up the field, and then punting it away. And then when it's time for you to get your points, you're losing the ball because of silly mistakes. It's hard to win games when you're actively trying to lose them by making mistakes. You could see that this was a young team making young rookie mistakes. Disappointing. All right, guys, any questions, any comments, concerns, anything that you want to have said in the chat? Let's go over my notes, see if anything that I was here. Oh, O-line looks... Thomas Cahill. Thank you for stopping by, good sir. Our management is killing us. 5 weeks of bad decisions. Time to make a change. What do you mean our management is killing us? Like, you mean our front office? Because I disagree. There's one place where I think we made a mistake, and I think that's more coaching staff. Coaching staff deciding to keep certain players over other players. Like LaMarcus. See, okay. I get what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree. Like, cause like my thing is there's not much. This front office did everything perfectly. This front office gave us all of the weapons. This front office gave us all of the players that we needed. This front office gave us an incredibly competitive 80-man, 90-man roster that we were able to... 11 players were claimed. Part of me is just wondering about this coaching staff and some of the decisions that they're making about players that they're keeping. You know? This is one of those things where I look at the coaching staff a little bit more, and how much control they have of the roster is a little bit worrying. Because, like, I'll say this, defensively, some of the personnel choices don't make sense to me on the defensive side of the ball. LaMarcus Joyner is one of those things for me. Keeping him at 30 years old makes no sense to me. But, like, yeah, I think it's coaching staff more than anything, because play calling was there. We were calling plays well defensively. We were. And it's just like, offensively, I think we kept all the right players, in my opinion. I think offensively we didn't cut any players that really surprised me. We kept Lawrence Cager, which surprised me, and I didn't want him at all. But all of the other players that we kept on the offensive side of the ball, I was on board with. I think defensively, I was surprised more. Robert S., you're absolutely correct. No creativity on the offensive play calling. There's too many pass calls, not enough running options, and it's just like, that's just for me. That's just my situation there. LaMarcus Joyner I agree with you. LaMarcus Joyner being on here. By Marshall, I'm assuming you mean Jonathan Marshall getting cut. I'm assuming that's what you mean. I get it. With there too, Nathan Shepard and Sheldon Rankins are being on this team is a little bit of a mystery, but they didn't play too badly this week, so maybe they're turning it around there. I wanted Ty to stay on this team. I didn't want Bam Knight. Bam Knight's not ready to be an NFL running back, in my opinion. But there's that, and I agree with you. Offensively, we're the offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, made bad calls today offensively. 13 personnel constantly. We spend all this money in tight ends, and why are we not running 12 personnel and 22 personnel? And, like, why are we throwing out all of these receivers? Why are we throwing the ball almost 60 times in a game? Especially when the run game was effective. We did something that I didn't want us to do this game, which is the first play of the season we ran the ball. The first play of the season we ran the ball. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be a play action. You sell the run and then you pass it to Elijah Moore. That's what I wanted. But I wasn't upset because Michael Carter on the first run of the game breaks it for 12 yards. Like, the run game was effective and we were moving the chains with the run game. To give up on it so early, we just gave up on the run game. Really, really disappointed me. I think it's the growing pains of a young coaching staff. But all of these people, not saying that you're part of this group, Thomas. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I'm not sure. But all of these people that are saying that it's time for change, it's too soon to make any type of change with the coaching staff or anything like that. Mike LaFleur is going in his second year as an offensive coordinator. And just like when you're evaluating a quarterback or any type of player, when they show you flashes of the greatness and the creativity and the ability, that's what you bank on, and you hope that they start moving closer to that. And we saw enough from Mike LaFleur last year to say, you know what? I believe in Mike LaFleur. I think that he's going to be a good play caller. I think he's just got to figure out what he is a little bit more and realize that you can't throw the ball with Joe Flacco 60 times a game. Just can't do it. It's not a realistic thing. But that's growing pains of a second-year offensive coordinator. Robert Saleh, I don't feel like he made very many mistakes today as the CEO. We didn't waste a timeout. We didn't, have any false start. We didn't, like, the things that you can attribute to Robert Saleh, I think we're done well. We managed the clock well. We moved the ball well. The players, changes in the personnel were in and out. He was standing up for his players and fighting with the refs and doing all of those things. I think he did well. Ulbrich as well. Finally, he goes into a season, knock on all of the wood, with all 11 of his starters, and the defense looked incredible, minus LaMarcus Joyner. So, the contracts that these guys were given and all of that stuff, we're with this coaching staff for at least another 2 years, and that's not including this year. I think they get this year and then 2 more years, and I have faith in this coaching staff. I do. I really do have faith in this coaching staff. Because, one of the things that kept going through my head throughout this game was the one thing that keeps going through my head about this game is if Zach Wilson was healthy. If Zach Wilson was healthy, a quarterback who can move, who's mobile, who brings a threat to the run game, is this defense different? Does this defense that the Ravens are throwing at us look different? Do we get more space in the box? Does our defensive line, does their defensive line crowd our offensive line that much? What does that look like on that front? It truly, that's the thing that's going to haunt me tonight is what does this game look like if Zach Wilson is under center? Because I think this game goes differently with Zach Wilson. Not saying that Zach outperforms Joe Flacco by 1,000,000, but just Zach's mobility and what he brings to that front. Does this game look any different with that? And with his arm, he's got a cannon, we can take deep shots and we can really test out their safeties. Regarding the front office, why didn't we sign someone like Fisher or Cannon? When you look at the when you look at the when it comes to the signing of the tackles, when you look at the signing of the tackles, I am almost positive, wasn't Eric Fisher hurt last year? Yeah. Eric Fisher, I think we don't sign Eric Fisher because the last 3 of the last years he was hurt, or he didn't play all 16, all 17 games, right? So you try to get somebody who's healthy. I think that's the thing with Eric Fisher. I could be wrong here, and I'm okay with being wrong, but I did want Eric Fisher. Let me say that. Eric Fisher was the guy that I wanted. And then let's go Cannon. And then Cannon was coming off of an injury, wasn't he? He played 4 games for Houston last year. Played 4 games for Houston last year. He's on the practice squad for New England right now. Like, I just don't. When it's regarding the offensive tackles, I can't really blame this front office for anything that they did, right? How are you going to guess that Mekhi Becton is going to chip his knee? You don't. But you can't also just assume that he's going to go down. You prepare for the fact that he goes down, and that's why we drafted Max Mitchell. You know, was the idea. I think everybody thought if we're going to lose George Fant or Mekhi Becton, more than likely it's going to be a couple of weeks into the season where we think Max Mitchell will be ready. And then Max Mitchell goes down, and then you bring in, right, Dwayne Brown, someone who's historically been healthy, right? Dwayne Brown has historically been healthy, like really healthy. Let's just look at his seasons. In 2018, he played 16 of 16 games. In 2019, he played 12 out of the 16 games. In 2020, he played 16 of 16 games. And last year, he played 17. Like, he's been healthy. That's the craziest thing. And then he comes down and he goes down with a shoulder. Like, it's just bad luck on the offensive tackle situation. And even with that being said, even with all of that being said, we still had Max Mitchell, who in my opinion played relatively well in this game. And the person who was supposed to be the rock of the offensive line, the carryover from last year, someone that everybody wanted to re-sign and everybody was hyped up about in George Fant, goes out there and drops that type of performance. George Fant, if he keeps playing like that, lost himself a lot of money. Yeah, like, look, but this is bad luck. This just is one of those things of, like, you can't blame. Like, it's hard for me to blame Dwayne Brown for that when historically Dwayne Brown has been really healthy. Now, the good thing is I'm pretty sure Eric Fisher is still available, right? So now go make the right decision and go get Eric Fisher. But if we're getting Eric Fisher, do you know who I want to be replaced on this offensive line? George Fant, not Max Mitchell. Because we can't really play Connor McDermott, right? He's nice to have as like an offensive tackle 4, so you can have for jumbo sets, and if you need like a 4th tight end for a play call and you want a big man tight end on the red zone kind of a thing, like I'm on board with that. But you have to call Eric Fisher, right? And you just take the risk. Dude, look, I know I might be a little salty here because I was never a George Fant fan. I haven't been. I'm not. I don't want him on the New York Jets next year. I don't want to extend him. And that was before this game. But at this point, I'm willing to give him one more week. I want to sign Eric Fisher tomorrow. If I'm the Jets, I call Eric Fisher's agent. I sign him tomorrow. Excuse me. I sign him tomorrow. I have him practice the whole week, get up to speed, start learning the playbook, and don't play him against Cleveland or whatever. And then week 3, you're starting Eric Fisher and Max Mitchell. Did he, though? He only threw for like 200 yards. He threw less yardage than the Statue of Liberty that is Joe Flacco. We lost this game. You guys didn't win. The Ravens didn't look good today. And you should be worried because the Ravens didn't look good at all. It was so many mistakes on our offense. The offensive team lost the game today. Yeah, great. You got 3 touchdowns. You got 3 explosive plays because you targeted very smartly. And if you watch back, Sancho, I mentioned it. If you watch back, I gave the credit where the credit is deserved, where the offensive staff knew the 2 or 3 weak spots on the New York Jets defense, and the 3 touchdowns came from 2 weak players that shouldn't be on the field, but they are. Because 2 of the touchdowns came from free safety LaMarcus Joyner, who shouldn't be on the field because you targeted him twice. And then the other one was a play that had no business being a touchdown. If he was covered by literally anybody else in our secondary, it wouldn't be a touchdown. But Bryce Hall comes onto the field, you guys target him, and you get a touchdown on Duvernay. That's really it. But again, it's not like the Ravens won this game. I said it. If you go away from this, if you walk away from this game as a Ravens fan, and you're happy with, you should be happy that you won. You should be unhappy with how you won. If you guys are supposed to be like this team, whatever, like you should have blown us out by more, right? It didn't look good. Lamar Jackson wasn't able to run. He ran for 17 yards. The running back ran for 17 yards. 17 of 30, that's less, that's like what, 50-something% completion percentage? It's not a good completion percentage. Wasn't moving the ball effectively down the field, really. It was just 3 explosive plays. That's it. And those 3 explosive plays happen to be touchdowns because you targeted the Jets' weak players. And again, credit to that's a 56% completion percentage. Again, we lost this game. The Ravens didn't win it. That's what happened. Don't worry about the Ravens. Worry about your sorry team. I don't care about the credit you gave. You disrespected Lamar and he proved you wrong. Did he? When did he prove me wrong? Like, I'm asking for it. What did he do that proved us wrong? We held him in the run game and you targeted our 2 weakest players 3 times and it worked out. That's not Lamar. That's the coaching staff. I'm never unhappy with W's, but the QB threw for 3 touchdowns and an interception, like a really, really bad interception. Like, it's fine. And dude, I'm fine. I'm cool. I walked away with a lot of positives from this game. And you beat our backup quarterback. Like, you beat a backup. Thomas Cahill. I'm afraid that Saleh is going to lean on the idea that we are still developing. That is a disgusting excuse. I don't want to say that it's an excuse, but I think that's a reality. I don't think that we're like, was any fan really looking at this and being like, hey, we got to be super competitive this year? You know what I mean? The back half of our schedule is where we're really going to find out what the Jets are. But we have a lot of turnover on this team, on a lot of places on this team. It's going to take some time for this team to get used to one another. And like I said, if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot as many times as we did, there's a real chance here that we win this game. If we don't lose because we lost, that's the thing. We lost this game. If we make that field goal, if we don't fumble the ball twice, if Lawrence Cager doesn't slip and fall, you know, what does this game look like if those things don't happen? If we're not shooting what happens if we don't give the Baltimore Ravens insanely good field position after a 20-yard punt? We lost this game because we shot ourselves in the foot. It's like I've been saying, and I'll continue saying it. The Baltimore Ravens didn't win this game. They didn't do anything in this week or in this game that made me go, oh my God, look at the Baltimore Ravens. They're back. They're not. But, like, yeah, it has been true for decades, Cahill. I'll go back to some of the things. It has been true for decades. But, like, I don't think this is the first time I've actually believed in it. Before, I was just a lie that we've told ourselves kind of a thing. But I actually like I said, I'm optimistic. I'm not ready to give up on anything here. And Joe Flacco just threw for 300 yards, right? Like, yeah, he threw 60 times, but he did just throw for 300 yards against a Baltimore defense that's pretty good. You know what I mean? We had bright spots, and if we just don't shoot ourselves in the foot throughout this game, we do better. And that's the reality of it. We do better. It's time to eat your crow after running your mouth the way you did. Eat what crow? Dude, Lamar didn't do anything impressive. He threw one good ball. One good ball. All game. Everything else was a badly thrown ball. And the running back couldn't run. On a team, on the 32nd ranked team, of the 32nd ranked defense last year. Okay? He was only able to put up 200 yards. Quarterbacks were doing that in their sleep against us last year. Bro, come on. You gotta look at your team realistically here. We lost this game, and that's absolutely fine, but the Ravens didn't look good doing it. I disagree, GB515. I don't think it's the same old Jets. It's week one. It's week one, guys. It's week one, and we're playing with a battered offensive line, and we saw that. Like, the offensive line, Joe Flacco and Mike LaFleur's uninspired play calling lost us the game. If we're doing that without, like, the mistakes, right? We left, like, 4 or 5 points on the table. No, we left 3, 4, 7 points on the table from missed field goals and missed things like that. It's just the way that it is. Andre Thomas, all gas. Thank you for stopping by. If you haven't stopped by before, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Really helps the channel. Mims should be playing over Davis, and the OC needs to open up the playbook. This was a winnable game. If we had decent QB play, like Flacco looked old and shouldn't be out there. Part of that is true. I disagree with the Mims being out there over Davis. I don't think Mims is better than Davis. Corey Davis, minus the dropped pass, which was partially his fault and partially Joe Flacco's fault. They both share the blame. Joe Flacco missed him, threw the ball behind him. Corey Davis is an NFL wide receiver. He should catch that. If we eliminate that, Corey Davis did relatively well, in my opinion. 6 of 9 for 77 yards. Pretty good there. And you're absolutely right. If we had, I said this earlier, Andre, that what if Zach was out there? What if we had a quarterback that could actually move, who actually could throw the ball? You know, I think the offensive play calling is what was like doing the thing. And Thomas Cahill says it here perfectly. Why did we only discover that Wilson is a number 1 wide receiver, like a first round pick wide receiver in like the third, fourth quarter? Why did it take so long to get him involved? We should be rotating our wide receivers just like we rotate our defensive line. It's our strength, is that we have 4 really, really good wide receivers. And we should have fresh legs. And we should be doing those things. Garrett Wilson went 4 for 52. Now, he had his fair share of drops and batted passes and things like that. He had 4 missed passes. Was targeted 8 times. So he was targeted relatively a lot, but it was all late in the game. You know what I mean? It's just... And it's just disappointing. Like I said, what happens... The other thing that upset me is where were the tight ends? Tyler Conklin was the only tight end getting targeted. Got targeted 7 times outside of Lawrence Cager, but I don't count him as anything on this team. You know, it's disappointing, to say the least, because our defense did its job. Our defense stopped that offense. It made them look really, really foolish and really, really silly. But if you give an offensive play caller more times with the ball, more possession, more time with the ball, they control the time of possession and more shots at to play call and more this and more that, the defense can't hold forever. That defense was bending and bending and bending and bending, and they were holding strong, and they were holding that team, and they couldn't get the ball running at all. None of their running backs were doing anything. Lamar couldn't pass, and then you just get to a breaking point, and we all saw when it happened. It was like right in the middle of the third quarter where this defense just got gassed because the offense couldn't hold on to the ball. And then the defense breaks, and then 2 or 3 explosive plays happen, and then boom, the game's out. The game's gone. And it's just like, it's just disappointing because I think we lost this game because of 3 plays. It's 3 plays. 3 plays. And those 3 plays, you could tell were coming from mental errors because the defense was out there for so long. So long. And it's disappointing because this offense couldn't get anything done. You've got a really, really, really good offensive weapons. And we couldn't get any of them involved. And Sancho, if you've listened to the whole point, you'll see what I said. The defense broke right there at the end of the third quarter and then regained. Because, yeah, you guys looked horrible offensively for the first half of that game. And you guys had the most time of possession and all that time. But what do you expect? The defense can't hold forever. You guys looked abysmal. The game was in it until, like I said, we were in that game until we lost the game. All of those mental mistakes, all of those things that happened, we lost that game. What does that possession look like if Breece Hall and Tyler Conklin don't fumble it? You know? What does that time of possession go? Do we keep the ball a little bit longer? What happens if Corey Davis catches that ball? There's a lot of what ifs. Like I said, we lost that game by mistakes that we did. But Corey Davis should not be the number 1 receiver anymore. He should be relegated to the as soon as we saw what Garrett Wilson really is and Elijah Moore, what he's really doing, and Braxton Berrios with what he's really being able to do in this offense, in this scheme and all of that stuff. Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson should flip. They should flip kind of roles. Garrett Wilson should be starting over Corey Davis, in my opinion. He just looked too good to not be starting. That move that he did, like, dude, he put Kyle Hamilton on skates. And then he makes 3 other Ravens just look foolish, like a child, infants out there playing a man's game, turns what is a 1-yard gain into a 9-yard gain. Like, the fact that we didn't get him involved more is crazy. Elijah Moore too. Elijah Moore doing the same kind of just dancing, making corners and DBs, and everybody just miss. And we didn't get them involved in the game quick enough. And then the other thing, like I said again, how do we not run the ball more? We ran the ball 16 times. I still can't get over that. We ran the ball 16 times. It's insane to me. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, I'll let Sancho believe that he's got a good team this year. That's great. That's good for you. You beat a rebuilding team. Congratulations. And it wasn't even a pretty win. But I'm going to focus on what the Jets did and not what the Ravens did, because the Ravens didn't look good, in my opinion. They didn't look like a playoff team. Especially if, I don't know if you watched any of the other games from your division, but it does not look good for you guys. You might only be better than the Steelers, and that's because TJ Watt is hurt. Literally because he tore his pec today. And if that's true, then it's the only team that you guys have a shot at beating in your division. So, there's that. Don't have to deal with Ravens fans for the rest of the year. And they'll be doing mock drafts by December like the rest of everybody. With Zach at QB, Wilson and Moore on the outside, this is going to be deadly. I agree, Thomas Cahill. I agree. This team with Zach, with that arm and the speed, that's the thing that we weren't able to capitalize on, is the speed that this team has. We're so fast, and we can't utilize it because The left side of the offensive line, specifically with George Fant, looked atrocious. And Joe Flacco is 37 years old. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. But there's no point in complaining about it. Zach's hurt. We're not going to see Zach for a few weeks. We do face a really tough division right off the rip. Face the whole AFC North right off the rip. It sucks that's how we're going to have to do it, and that's how we're going to have to start it. But that's just the way it is. But I think the Jets looked really competitive in this game. I think it looked really good, and I think that the final score isn't going to be indicative of what this team actually is. Once the offensive tackles really situate themselves and we get Zach back under center, watch out, because I think we're a much different team. Much different team. Like the things that keep going on in my head is like, what if Dwayne Brown plays? Because apparently the offensive line unit started gelling towards the back half of the year. Not the back half of the year, but the back half of practices before Dwayne Brown goes down. What if Zach Wilson is playing and we have that escapability and that threat of running from a quarterback? There's a lot of what ifs there. What if Tony Adams played instead of LaMarcus Joyner? Man, I was calling for Tony Adams. It's hard. I was. Alrighty, everybody. I'm going to end the stream there. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah. You guys, Lamar's the third best quarterback in the division, in your division. That's a fact. It's not even he's the third best quarterback in the division. Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback, and when he's back, he'll be the second best quarterback in that division. The Cleveland Browns are a much better built team than the Ravens are. Joe Burrow is a top 5 QB in this league. Definitely easily the best QB in your division. And they're the best overall roster on your division. So, yeah, with the Houston Texans. What? You really going to say anything about him versus Lamar when he was on the Houston Texans? Come on, dude. Bro. Yeah, against a better defense. The Steelers have a better defense than the Ravens do. Come on, guy. All right, you're being a homer. That's fine. Be a homer. You're allowed to be a homer. Your team just won. Feel good about it. I'm not going to have this argument with you. Well, you can come back at the end of the year if you want to have this conversation. I honestly don't care about the Ravens anymore. We lost against them. Lots of positives. We lost this game. The Ravens didn't win it. Thank you, Thomas, for stopping by. Thank you, everybody who stopped by and dropped questions. Even you, Sancho. Thanks for stopping by, interacting with the chat, giving me a view. It's always fun talking football. We may disagree, but it is just a game, right? Well played. GG's. Your team won. We may disagree on how it won, how they won, and all of that stuff. But that being said, well played. Interesting to see what your team is this year. And really, I'm going to be watching your team because of the Lamar contract situation. Do you guys end up paying him? The fact that he turned down $290 million because he wanted it fully guaranteed is honestly surprising to me. I don't know what that situation